So my wife, Courtney and I, so we got 3 kiddos. All right, we got a 7-year-old, we got a 5-year-old, and we have a newly minted 3-year-old. It was his birthday a week ago, and when we recently got to go back to Australia. It was about a year and a half ago. We got to go back to Australia, and it was the first time for our family that we've been able to go back to Australia. It was the first time we could afford it. My wife, it was her first time. It was the first time for the kids. And so as I was preparing the kids to go back to Australia, I said, kids, this is a big deal that we get to go back to Australia. We got to cross a massive, massive ocean in a massive, massive plane. You're going to have a wonderful time. I'm going to teach you all about Australia. We're going to go to the zoo. We're going to do all sorts of fun things. And the other thing I said, guys, here's the most amazing thing is, kids, you're half Australian. And the kids were like, oh, half Australian. Cool, Dad. Yeah, that's great. And I left that with them for a little bit. And a few hours later, our 5-year-old came up to me and he goes, hey, Dad, so which half? A clever little boy. But when my wife was actually pregnant with our 5-year-old, she was actually given some medicine for nausea. And I was in Austin, Texas for a show, and she called me, and it was a fairly frantic phone call, and she said, look, I need you to come home. And up until that point in touring and being gone a decent amount, I'd never received that phone call from my wife. And I said, well, honey, what's going on? And she said, well, I've been taking this medicine, and I just can't stop taking it. I need you to come home, and we need to deal with this together. And so I got on the next plane, and I go home, and I come in the back door, and I see my beautiful wife. I said, honey, are you okay? And she said, well, I'm okay right now, but in a few hours, things are going to get really, really difficult. And sure enough, a few hours later, I saw her hands begin to tremble. And she started saying things like, hey, I know the doctors don't want me taking any more of this medicine, but what if I just take one more pill to get me through the night? What if I just take one more pill? And it was at that point that I realized, we had a problem. And so the next morning, we got up and we went. I took her to a mental health facility. We arrived at kind of a strange building. You get in the waiting room. There was nobody else around, and very, very isolated, very, very lonely. And eventually, a nurse comes and says, Courtney, will you come on back? And so we both got up to go back. And right before we got to the door, they looked at me and they said, Luke, you don't get to come for this. You got to stay out there. And for some reason, that separation in that moment, in that low moment, made us both. It was one of the most empty moments of my life. And she came out a little while later, and she said, Luke, they're recommending intensive therapy. And so that's what we did. I would drop her off at 9 a.m. in the morning, pick her up at 2 p.m., and we did that for a few weeks. And after all of that, we were at home one evening, and she had this bottle of pills in her hand. And she said, Luke, I need to go and flush these pills because these pills represent so much shame and so much guilt in my life that I just need to see them leave one by one. And at that point, I was reminded of a story about an explorer who had gone to a foreign land. And when this explorer had gone to the foreign land and he arrived, he said to his men, hey, we're going to go see what's over the mountains. We're going to see what this land has for us. We're going to see what's in our future. And after he had finished explaining this to his men, he realized that none of his men wanted to follow him. They just wanted to return to what was comfortable. They just wanted to return to what was familiar. They just wanted to return to the past. And so this explorer waited a few days, and then he calls all of his men back onto that beach. And once he had all of his men accounted for on that beach, he gave his generals the command to burn the ships. Because he said, we will not retreat, we will not go back, we will not live in the past, but we will leave ourselves no option than to see what is over the mountains, than to see what this land has for us, than to see what is in our future. And for my wife, when she took those pills and she flushed them, that was her moment of burning the past. And for some of us here, tonight, all across who might be watching this, look, I don't know everybody's story. It's impossible for me to. I'm sure that there's been things that have been said. I'm sure that there's things that have been done that are tremendously painful. That there's all sorts of bitterness, all sorts of hurt built up because of things in your past. And if I could tell you one thing, I would say this. I would say, go and burn the ships.